The mining colony on Kepler 442b was supposed to be empty. That's what 12-year-old Marcus Chen thought when his family's transport ship made an emergency landing on the barren world. Their engines had failed 3 days into what should have been a routine journey to the outer colonies, and this dead rock was their only option for survival. Marcus pressed his face against the porthole as their ship descended through the thin atmosphere. The planet looked like a giant brown marble, scarred with deep canyons and strange geometric patterns that didn't look natural. His parents were busy with the pilot, arguing about fuel reserves and emergency protocols, but Marcus couldn't stop staring at those patterns. When they finally touched down in what used to be the colony's landing bay, the silence was overwhelming. The buildings were still there, made of that strange blue metal that human colonists always used on hostile worlds, but there were no lights, no people, no signs of life anywhere. "Stay close to the ship," his father warned as they stepped outside in their environment suits. The air was breathable according to their scanners, but barely. It was thin and cold and tasted like metal when Marcus took his first breath. They found the colony completely abandoned. Meals were still on tables, half-eaten and now covered in a strange crystalline frost. Personal belongings were scattered everywhere, as if people had just vanished in the middle of their daily routines. In the main command center, all the computers were still running, displaying the same message over and over. Evacuation protocol activated. Immediate departure required. But what struck Marcus as odd was that all the messages were dated just 3 weeks ago. This colony had been thriving recently, so where was everyone? While his parents worked on repairing their ship with salvaged parts from the colony, Marcus explored. He wasn't supposed to wander off alone, but curiosity got the better of him. The colony was built into the side of a massive canyon, and at the bottom he could see something glinting in the pale sunlight. The climb down wasn't as difficult as it looked. The canyon walls had natural handholds, and Marcus had always been good at climbing. As he descended, the air grew warmer and he could hear something strange. A low, rhythmic sound that was almost like breathing. At the bottom of the canyon, hidden behind fallen rocks and twisted metal from some kind of crash, Marcus found the source of the sound. It was a creature unlike anything he had ever seen or imagined. The thing was enormous, easily the size of their transport ship, with scales that shifted between deep purple and silver depending on how the light hit them. It had 4 powerful legs, wings that were folded against its body, and a long neck that ended in a head filled with teeth that could easily crush a human. But what shocked Marcus most was that the creature was trapped. Heavy chains made of the same blue metal as the colony buildings were wrapped around its legs and neck. The chains were connected to massive anchors driven deep into the canyon floor. The creature's breathing was labored, and Marcus could see that it hadn't eaten in days. Maybe weeks, the dragon, because that's what it looked like, even though dragons were supposed to be myths, turned its massive head toward him. Its eyes were the color of molten gold, and they held an intelligence that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. This wasn't just an animal. This was a thinking, feeling being, and it was dying. Marcus stepped closer, and the dragon didn't try to attack him. Instead, it made a sound that was almost like a whimper. The boy could see wounds where the chains had cut into the creature's hide, and its ribs were showing through its scales. "You're starving," Marcus whispered. And the dragon's ears, delicate things that looked like they were made of the same material as butterfly wings, twitched at the sound of his voice. Without thinking about the danger, Marcus approached the massive creature. He pulled off his emergency food pack and opened it, revealing the nutrient bars his mother had packed for their journey. They weren't much, but they were all he had. The dragon watched with those golden eyes as Marcus placed the food within reach of its massive head. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, with surprising gentleness, the dragon picked up one of the small bars with the tip of its tongue and swallowed it. Marcus sat down on a rock nearby, and for the first time since landing on this strange world, he didn't feel alone. The dragon continued to eat slowly, savoring each small piece of food as if it were the most precious thing in the universe. "I'm Marcus," the boy said quietly. "I don't know why they chained you up, but this isn't right." The dragon finished eating and lowered its great head until it was level with Marcus. Then, in a gesture that would have been impossible to believe if he hadn't seen it himself, the creature bowed. Not a nod, not a simple acknowledgement, but a deep, respectful bow that spoke of gratitude and something else, recognition. As Marcus reached out to touch the dragon's snout, he had no idea that this moment would change everything, not just for him, not just for the dragon, but for the entire galaxy. Because what Marcus didn't know was that this creature was no ordinary dragon, and the chains that bound it weren't just restraints. They were the only thing keeping a war from starting that would consume entire star systems. The dragon's golden eyes held secrets that went back thousands of years, and as it looked at this small human boy who had shown it kindness when no one else would, something awakened in its ancient mind, something that had been sleeping, waiting for exactly this moment. Marcus stayed with the dragon for hours, sharing more of his food and talking quietly. He told the creature about Earth, about his family's journey to the outer colonies, about his dreams of becoming an explorer like the heroes in his favorite stories. The dragon listened to every word, its golden eyes never leaving Marcus's face. When the boy finally had to return to the colony, he promised he would come back. The dragon watched him climb up the canyon wall, and Marcus could swear he heard something like a purr rumbling from the creature's massive chest. That night, while his parents worked on the ship repairs, Marcus researched everything he could find about this planet in the colony's database. What he discovered made his blood run cold. The mining operation here hadn't been abandoned because of equipment failure or economic problems. It had been evacuated because of what they had found buried in the canyon. The creature wasn't just any dragon. According to the files, it was a Drakmori, one of the last members of a species that had once ruled this entire sector of the galaxy. The reports described them as incredibly intelligent, capable of faster-than-light travel without ships, and possessing technology that was thousands of years ahead of any other known civilization. But they were also described as dangerous. The files claimed that a single Drakmori could destroy entire fleets with their psychic abilities, and that their species had been at war with every other intelligent race they had encountered. The human colonists had found this one already chained up in some kind of ancient prison, and when they realized what it was, they had called for immediate evacuation. Marcus read deeper into the files, looking for more information about who had chained the dragon and why. What he found changed everything he thought he knew about the situation. The chains weren't human-made. They were Drakmori technology, forged from a metal that could only be created using their own psychic abilities. And according to the translations of ancient text found with the creature, it hadn't been imprisoned by enemies. It had chained itself. The dragon's name was Zephyros, and he was a prince of his people. But he wasn't in exile for crimes or failures. He was there by choice as punishment for something that the files could only describe as the Great Betrayal. The ancient texts spoke of a decision that had torn the Drakmori civilization apart, sending them into a war that had lasted for centuries and ultimately destroyed most of their kind. Marcus closed the computer files and stared out at the canyon where Zephyros waited in the darkness. Everything the colonists believed about the dragon was based on fear and old stories. But Marcus had looked into those golden eyes, and he had seen something that the reports had missed entirely: guilt. The next morning, Marcus told his parents he was going to explore the outer edges of the colony. Instead, he gathered all the food he could carry and made his way back down into the canyon. Zephyros was waiting for him, and the dragon's eyes seemed brighter than they had the day before. "I know who you are," Marcus said as he approached. "Your name is Zephyros, and you're not here because someone captured you. You put yourself in those chains." The dragon's massive head drew back in surprise, and for a moment, Marcus thought he had made a terrible mistake. Then Zephyros made a sound that was almost like laughter, a deep rumbling noise that echoed off the canyon walls. When the dragon spoke, Marcus nearly fell off the rock where he was sitting. The voice came directly into his mind, warm and ancient and filled with more sadness than any living thing should have to carry. "You are perceptive for one so young, Marcus Chen. Yes, I bound myself here, and yes, I have been waiting. But not for rescue, for judgment. Judgment for what?" Marcus asked, surprised that he could speak directly back to the dragon through his thoughts. The images that flooded Marcus's mind were almost too much to process. He saw the Drakmori at the height of their civilization, beings of incredible beauty and power, who could travel between stars with a thought and reshape matter with their will. He saw their great cities floating in space, powered by energies that humans could barely comprehend, but he also saw the war. Not a war with other species as the human files had claimed, but a civil war among the Drachmori themselves. And at the center of it all was Zephyros, making a choice that would doom his entire people. "We discovered something," Zephyros explained, his mental voice heavy with regret. "A way to expand our consciousness beyond individual minds to become something greater than the sum of our parts. Most of my people wanted to proceed carefully to study the risks. But I was young and arrogant, and I believed we could control any danger." The images showed Zephyros leading a faction of Drachmori in an experiment that went catastrophically wrong. Instead of expanding their consciousness, they had created something else, a collective mind that consumed individual identity and turned the Drachmori into something that was no longer truly alive. "Half of my people were lost to the collective before we could stop it," Zephyros continued. "The other half blamed me for the disaster, and rightfully so. But rather than face their judgment, I fled here and chained myself, hoping that isolation would be punishment enough for what I had done." Marcus sat quietly for a long time, processing what he had learned. Finally, he stood up and walked closer to the dragon, close enough to touch the massive creature's snout. "How long have you been here?" he asked. 3,000 of your years, give or take a century. And in all that time, has your guilt brought back the people you lost?" Zephyros's golden eyes widened. "No, but then you've been punishing yourself for nothing," Marcus said firmly. "My grandmother used to tell me that the only way to make up for a mistake is to do something that helps more people than you hurt. Sitting in chains doesn't help anyone." For the first time in 3 millennia, Zephyros considered the possibility that there might be another path forward. And as he looked at this small human boy who had shown him more wisdom in 2 days than he had managed to find in 3,000 years of solitude, something began to change in the ancient dragon's heart. Marcus spent the next 3 days visiting Zephyros while his parents continued repairing their ship. Each conversation revealed more about the dragon's past and the true scope of what had happened to the Drachmori civilization. But it also revealed something else. Zephyros wasn't the only survivor of his kind. "There are others," the dragon admitted on the 3rd day, "scattered across the galaxy, hiding on remote worlds or living in exile among other species. Some blame me for what happened, others have simply given up hope that our people can ever be whole again." "How many others?" Marcus asked. "Perhaps 24, though I cannot be certain. We stopped communicating centuries ago. The pain of our shared memories was too great." Marcus had been thinking about something since his first conversation with Zephyros, and now seemed like the right time to bring it up. "You said your people could travel between stars without ships. If I helped you get free from these chains, could you help my family get home?" Zephyros was quiet for a long moment. "I could do more than that, young Marcus. I could ensure your family never wanted for anything again. Drachmori technology could advance human civilization by thousands of years. But there would be a price." "What kind of price?" "If I leave this place, if I rejoin the galaxy, then I must face what remains of my people. I must try to heal the wounds I created, even if that means facing their anger and their judgment. Are you prepared to be part of that? Because once I am free, there will be no going back for either of us." Marcus thought about his parents struggling with the ship repairs, about the long journey still ahead of them if they managed to get off this planet, about all the challenges his family would face trying to make a new life in the outer colonies. Then he thought about Zephyros, alone and chained for 3,000 years, punishing himself for a mistake that couldn't be undone. "My dad always says that doing the right thing isn't supposed to be easy," Marcus said finally. "I think helping you is the right thing no matter what happens next." Zephyros lowered his great head until his forehead was touching the ground in front of Marcus. "Then I accept your help. And I swear by the ancient bonds of my people that no harm will come to you or your family because of your kindness." The chains that bound Zephyros were not held by physical locks, but by the dragon's own psychic energy, turned against himself in an act of self-punishment that had lasted for millennia. Breaking them required something that Zephyros could not provide alone: forgiveness. "I forgive you," Marcus said simply, placing his small hand on the dragon's massive snout. "Not because what you did wasn't wrong, but because you've suffered enough. Your people need you to be strong again, not broken by guilt." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Light erupted from the chains as they began to dissolve, not breaking but simply ceasing to exist as Zephyros finally allowed himself to let go of his self-imposed punishment. The dragon's scales brightened from dull purple to brilliant silver, and his golden eyes blazed with an inner fire that had been absent for 3,000 years. As the last of the chains vanished, Zephyros spread his wings for the first time in millennia. They were magnificent, translucent membranes that seemed to capture and reflect starlight even in the dim canyon. The dragon's joy was palpable, radiating from his mind in waves that made Marcus laugh with pure happiness. But their celebration was cut short by the sound of approaching engines. Marcus looked up to see 3 ships descending into the canyon, sleek predatory vessels that didn't match any human design he had ever seen. "Kethmori," Zephyros said, his mental voice suddenly grim. "The hunters have found us." "Hunters?" "A species that has made it their mission to track down and eliminate any remaining Drachmori. They believe our people are too dangerous to be allowed to exist." The ships landed in a triangle formation around them, and Marcus could see armed figures in environmental suits emerging from each vessel. They carried weapons that hummed with energy, and their movements had the precision of professional soldiers. One of them stepped forward and activated a translation device. When he spoke, his voice was mechanical and cold. "Drachmori entity, you will submit to immediate termination. Human child, step away from the creature and you will not be harmed." Marcus looked at Zephyros, who was tensing his muscles as if preparing for a fight he knew he couldn't win. The dragon had been weakened by 3,000 years of imprisonment, and while his chains were gone, his strength had not yet returned. "You said you swore no harm would come to my family," Marcus whispered. "And I meant it," Zephyros replied, "but I may not be strong enough to protect you from them." Marcus stepped forward, placing himself between the dragon and the nearest hunter. "He's not a creature," the boy said loudly. "His name is Zephyros, and he's done nothing wrong." The lead hunter tilted his head, studying Marcus with what might have been curiosity. "You defend a Drachmori? Do you not know what his kind has done?" "I know what he's done," Marcus replied firmly. "He made a mistake 3,000 years ago, and he's been punishing himself for it ever since. But that doesn't mean he deserves to die." "The Drachmori cannot be allowed to live," the hunter said. "Their power is too great, their capacity for destruction too vast. This is for the safety of all intelligent life in the galaxy." Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, not just at the hunters, but at the unfairness of everything that had happened to Zephyros. "So you're going to kill him because he might do something bad? That's not justice, that's just fear." The hunter raised his weapon and Marcus heard Zephyros roar behind him, but before anyone could fire, a new voice echoed across the canyon. "Lower your weapons, Kethmori. The boy is under human protection, and this matter is more complex than you understand." Marcus turned to see his father standing at the rim of the canyon, flanked by a squad of human soldiers in full combat armor. The cavalry had arrived, but Marcus wasn't sure if that was going to make things better or worse. The standoff in the canyon stretched taut like a wire about to snap. Marcus stood between Zephyros and the Kethmori hunters, while human soldiers took positions along the canyon rim. Everyone had weapons pointed at everyone else, and Marcus was caught in the middle with a dragon, who was still too weak to fight effectively. Dr. Chen, the lead Kethmori hunter, called up to Marcus's father. "Remove your son from the vicinity of the Drachmori entity immediately. This creature represents a threat to all civilized life." Marcus's father rappelled down the canyon wall with surprising speed. Marcus had always known his dad was more than just a research scientist, but he had never seen him move like a soldier before. When Dr. Chen reached the canyon floor, he approached the group with calm confidence that somehow made the heavily armed aliens take a step back. "Commander Vexith," Dr. Chen said, addressing the lead hunter by name. "I see the Kethmori Collective is still operating under the assumption that genocide is an acceptable form of peacekeeping." Marcus stared at his father in shock. How did he know these aliens, and why was he talking to them like old acquaintances? "Dr. Chen," Commander Vexith replied, his translated voice carrying what might have been respect. "We were told you had retired from active service. What brings a former human intelligence operative to this remote world?" "Family vacation," Dr. Chen said dryly. "Though I have to admit, finding my 12-year-old son having philosophical debates with one of the last Drachmori wasn't on my itinerary." Zephyros spoke directly into Marcus's mind. "Your father is not what he appears to be, young one. He carries the mental signatures of someone who has dealt with my people before." Marcus looked back and forth between his father and the dragon, pieces of a puzzle finally starting to come together. Dad, what's going on? Who are these people and how do you know them? Dr. Chen sighed and holstered a weapon Marcus hadn't even seen him draw. Son, there are some things about my job that I haven't told you. Before I became a research scientist, I worked for human intelligence as a xenological specialist. My job was to study and make contact with non-human species, including the Drakmori, especially the Drakmori. Marcus, what you've stumbled into here is one of the most closely guarded secrets in the galaxy. Most people believe the Drakmori are extinct, and the various galactic governments have been working very hard to keep it that way. Commander Vexith stepped forward, his weapon still trained on Zephyros. With respect, Dr. Chen, this conversation is irrelevant. The Drakmori entity must be eliminated before it can regain its full power, and pose a threat to settled worlds. What threat? Marcus demanded, his anger finally boiling over. Zephyros has been chained up here for 3,000 years. He's never hurt anyone. His very existence is a threat, another hunter interjected. The Drakmori possess technology that could destabilize the balance of power across the entire galaxy. If other species learned that any of them were still alive, it would trigger a new arms race that could lead to galactic war. Marcus looked at his father, searching for support. Dr. Chen was studying Zephyros with the trained eye of a xenological expert, taking in the dragon's posture, the way his scales had brightened since being freed, the intelligence in his golden eyes. Zephyros, Dr. Chen said, speaking directly to the dragon, I know you can understand me. I also know that your people were not the monsters that history has painted them to be. The real question is, what do you intend to do now that you're free? The dragon's mental voice was strong and clear as he responded. Not just to Dr. Chen, but to everyone in the canyon. I intend to find the surviving members of my people and attempt to heal the wounds that have divided us for millennia. If we can overcome our past mistakes and reunite, the Drakmori might once again be a force for good in the galaxy. And if you can't, Commander Vex demanded, then we will continue to live in exile as we have for the past 3,000 years, but we will not hide any longer, and we will not allow ourselves to be hunted to extinction by those who fear what we might become, rather than judging us for what we are. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. That sounds reasonable to me. Commander, I'm invoking Protocol 7 under the Galactic Accords. This Drakmori is officially under human protection, pending a full review of his case by the Galactic Council. The Kethmori hunters exchanged glances, and Marcus could sense their frustration even through their environmental suits. Protocol 7 was apparently something they couldn't just ignore. Dr. Chen, Commander Vexith said carefully, you are placing your entire species at risk with this decision. If the Drakmori proves to be hostile, then humanity will take responsibility for the consequences, Dr. Chen replied firmly. But I've spent 20 years studying xenological threats, and I know the difference between a dangerous predator and a person who's made mistakes and learned from them. Marcus felt a surge of pride in his father, followed immediately by a wave of worry. Dad, are you sure about this? I mean, I trust Zephyros, but if you're wrong. Son, one of the things I learned in my years with intelligence is that sometimes you have to take calculated risks in order to prevent bigger catastrophes. If we let the Kethmori execute Zephyros today, we'll never know if the Drakmori could have been allies instead of enemies. Zephyros lowered his great head toward Dr. Chen in a gesture of respect. You honor me with your trust, Dr. Chen. I will do everything in my power to prove that it is not misplaced. Commander Vexith stepped back and spoke quietly with his team for several minutes. Finally, he turned back to the group. Very well, Dr. Chen. We will respect Protocol 7 for now. But be aware that the Kethmori Collective will be monitoring this situation very closely. If the Drakmori shows any signs of aggression or attempts to contact other members of his species, you'll be the first to know, Dr. Chen assured him. As the Kethmori hunters returned to their ships and departed, Marcus realized that his life had just become incredibly complicated. But as he looked at Zephyros, now free and beginning to regain his strength, he also realized that he wouldn't change anything about what had happened. The real adventure was just beginning. 3 days after the confrontation with the Kethmori hunters, Marcus's family found themselves aboard a human intelligence cruiser heading toward the galactic core. The ship was massive compared to their original transport, with enough space for Zephyros to travel comfortably in a specially configured cargo bay that had been converted into temporary quarters for a dragon. Marcus spent most of his time with Zephyros, learning about Drakmori culture and history, while the dragon slowly regained his strength. Each day, Zephyros seemed a little brighter, a little more like the proud being he had once been before guilt and isolation had worn him down. "Your people fascinate me, Marcus," Zephyros said during one of their conversations. "In all my years of study, I have never encountered a species quite like humanity." "What do you mean?" "Most intelligent species develop in predictable patterns. They grow powerful, they become arrogant, they overreach and destroy themselves or stagnate into irrelevance. But humans seem to thrive on contradiction. You are violent yet compassionate, selfish yet capable of incredible sacrifice, primitive yet innovative beyond all reason." Marcus laughed. "My mom says that's just because we're young as a species. She thinks we'll grow out of it." "I hope not," Zephyros replied seriously. "Your contradictions may be exactly what the galaxy needs. The Drakmori fell because we became too pure, too focused on perfection. We lost the ability to adapt when our perfect plans went wrong." Their conversation was interrupted by Marcus's father entering the cargo bay. Dr. Chen looked tired but determined, carrying a data tablet that was displaying what looked like star charts. "Zephyros, we've received word from intelligence about the locations of other surviving Drakmori. Are you ready to learn what we've found?" The dragon's golden eyes brightened with an intensity Marcus had never seen before. "How many?" 23 confirmed survivors scattered across 17 different worlds. Most have been living in hiding, using their abilities to blend in with local populations or surviving in remote areas where no one would think to look for them. Zephyros was quiet for a long moment, processing the information. 23. I had hoped for more but feared there might be fewer. Do any of them know about the others? Some do. We've identified at least 3 small groups who have maintained contact with each other. But Marcus, there's something else you should know. Dr. Chen activated a holographic display that showed a detailed map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of the surviving Drakmori, but there were other markers as well. Blue dots that seemed to be moving in patterns that converged on the red ones. The Kethmori weren't the only ones tracking Drakmori survivors, Dr. Chen explained. We've detected at least 4 different species or organizations that have been hunting your people. Some want to capture them for their technology. Others want to eliminate them as threats, and a few seem to be collecting them for reasons we don't understand yet. How long before they find the others? Marcus asked. That depends on how careful the survivors have been. Some have been moving regularly, changing identities and hiding their abilities. Others have settled down and tried to live normal lives. Those are the ones most at risk. Zephyros spread his wings slightly, a gesture Marcus had learned indicated deep thought or emotional distress. We must reach them before the hunters do. But even if we save them all, what then? 24 Drakmori cannot rebuild a civilization. Maybe that's not what you're supposed to do, Marcus suggested. Maybe instead of trying to rebuild what you had before, you're supposed to build something new. Both his father and Zephyros looked at him with surprise. Marcus felt his cheeks redden but pressed on with his idea. I mean, you said that the Drakmori fell because they became too focused on perfection. And you said that humans are useful because we're contradictory and unpredictable. What if that's the answer? What if the new Drakmori civilization is supposed to be different, more connected to other species instead of isolated from them? Dr. Chen smiled proudly at his son. Marcus, that's not just insightful, it's potentially revolutionary. Zephyros, what do you think? The dragon was staring at Marcus with something that might have been awe. In 3,000 years of contemplation, I never considered that possibility. I was so focused on trying to return to what we were that I never thought about what we might become. There's something else, Dr. Chen added. Human intelligence has been authorized to offer the surviving Drakmori protected status within human space. It would mean giving up some of your independence, but it would also mean safety, and the chance to rebuild without fear of hunters. And in return, your knowledge and abilities would help humanity advance technologically and socially. It would be a true partnership, not exploitation. Zephyros considered this carefully. I cannot make such a decision for all my people, but I can help you contact them and present the option. Some may be interested, others may prefer to remain in hiding. That's fair, Dr. Chen agreed. But there's one more thing you should know. We're not just going to contact the other survivors. We're going to rescue them from the hunters who are closing in on them. This isn't going to be a peaceful diplomatic mission. Marcus felt his excitement spike. You mean we're going on rescue missions? Like real space adventures? I mean you're going back to your mother on the nearest safe world, Dr. Chen said firmly. This is going to be dangerous work, and I'm not risking your safety any more than I already have. But Zephyros turned his massive head toward Marcus, and the boy could sense the dragon's disagreement. Dr. Chen, with respect, your son may be more important to this mission than you realize. The surviving Drachmori have been alone and afraid for centuries. They will not trust easily, and they certainly will not trust humans who approach them with weapons and demands. What are you suggesting? Marcus freed me from chains that I could not break myself, not through force or superior technology, but through compassion and wisdom. If we are to convince the others to trust humanity, they need to see that same compassion and wisdom in action. Dr. Chen looked back and forth between his son and the dragon, clearly torn between parental protectiveness and professional necessity. Finally, he sighed. Marcus, if I agree to this, and I'm not saying I will, you would have to follow orders absolutely. No wandering off, no taking unnecessary risks, no heroic gestures that put you or others in danger. Marcus nodded eagerly. I promise, Dad. I just want to help. As their ship changed course toward the first rescue target, Marcus realized that what had started as a simple act of kindness toward a hungry dragon was turning into something much bigger. He was about to help reshape the future of an ancient civilization, and somehow that felt exactly right. Their first rescue mission took them to a water world called Nerida Prime, where intelligence reports indicated a Drachmori survivor had been living as a deep-sea researcher for over 200 years. The problem was that a group of Kethmori, hunters, had arrived in the system 3 days earlier and were systematically scanning the ocean depths with advanced detection equipment. Marcus stood on the bridge of the intelligence cruiser, watching the blue-green planet grow larger as they approached. Beside him, Zephyros was using his enhanced senses to probe the world below, searching for any trace of his fellow Drachmori. I can feel her, Zephyros said suddenly. Lyrale, one of the younger members of our kind. She was barely past her first century when the Civil War began. She always loved the water worlds, said they reminded her of the crystal seas of our homeworld. Where is she? Dr. Chen asked from the captain's chair. Deep. Perhaps 10 kilometers below the surface in a trench that humans have likely never explored. But the hunters are close. Their scanning equipment is crude by Drachmori standards, but it will find her eventually. The ship's sensor officer looked up from her console. Captain, we're detecting 3 Kethmori vessels in orbit around the planet. They're running active scans of the ocean floor in a grid pattern. Dr. Chen studied the tactical display. How long before they reach her position? At their current rate of progress, maybe 6 hours. Then we need to move fast. Marcus, Zephyros, you're going to take a deep-sea submersible down to make contact. I'll take a team to distract the Kethmori and buy you time. Marcus felt his heart racing with excitement and fear. This was really happening. He was about to meet another dragon, one who had been hiding alone for centuries. The submersible was a sleek craft designed for the deepest ocean exploration. It had been modified with a communication array that Zephyros could use to project his thoughts through the water, and a cargo bay large enough to carry a Drachmori if necessary. As they descended through the dark waters of Nerida Prime, Marcus watched the depth readings climb steadily higher, 5 kilometers, 7, 9. Finally, at just over 10 kilometers down, Zephyros stiffened with recognition. There, the dragon said, pointing toward a deep trench that seemed to extend even further into the planet's depths. She has made her home in the thermal vents. Clever. The heat and mineral content would mask her energy signature from most scanners. The submersible's lights illuminated a truly alien landscape. Strange plants and creatures that had evolved in the crushing depths moved through forests of thermal chimneys that belched superheated water into the frigid abyss. And there, nestled among the vents like a jewel in a crown, was Lyrale. She was smaller than Zephyros, but no less magnificent. Her scales were the deep blue-green of ocean depths, and they seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. She had been building something among the thermal vents. Not quite a home, but a place of meditation and solitude. When Zephyros projected his mental voice through the water, her reaction was immediate and dramatic. She spun toward their submersible with a speed that made Marcus dizzy, her golden eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Zephyros, brother, is it truly you? I felt you die 3,000 years ago when you severed your connection to our people. I did not die, sister, though perhaps I should have. I have been in exile, punishing myself for the mistakes that destroyed our civilization. But I have learned that punishment without purpose serves no one. Marcus watched through the submersible's viewports as the two dragons swam closer to each other, their massive forms moving with impossible grace through the deep water. When they touched snout to snout in a gesture of greeting, the bioluminescent creatures around them seemed to pulse brighter in response to their joy. "Who is the small one with you?" Lyrelei asked, her mental voice warm with curiosity as she studied Marcus through the transparent hull. "His name is Marcus Chen, and he is the reason I am free. He showed me that forgiveness is possible, even for those who believe themselves beyond redemption." Lyrelei swam closer to the submersible, and Marcus found himself looking directly into eyes that held the wisdom of centuries. When she spoke to him, her mental voice was gentle and musical. "You freed him from the chains of guilt, young one. That is no small gift. But why are you here? Surely not just to reunite old friends." Marcus glanced at Zephyros, who nodded encouragingly. "We're here to warn you. There are hunters in orbit, the Kethmori. They're looking for you, and they'll find this place eventually. But we're also here to offer you something else." Through their mental link, Marcus shared everything that had happened since Zephyros had been freed. The confrontation with the hunters, the protection offered by humanity, the possibility of reuniting the scattered Drakmori survivors under human protection. Lyrelei listened to it all without interruption, her expression growing more thoughtful with each revelation. When Marcus finished, she was quiet for a long time, floating motionless among the thermal vents that had been her home for 2 centuries. "You offer safety," she said finally, "but also dependence. To accept human protection would mean accepting human authority. Are your people truly willing to treat us as equals rather than valuable prisoners?" "I think so," Marcus replied honestly. "But I can't promise it will be perfect. Humans make mistakes too. The difference is that we try to learn from them instead of punishing ourselves forever." Lyrelei's laugh was like music in Marcus's mind, wisdom from one so young. "Very well. I will trust your judgment, Brother Zephyros, and the judgment of your young human friend. But I have conditions." "Name them," Zephyros said. "If I am to leave this place, I want to help find the others. My abilities are different from yours. I can sense life across vast distances, feel the patterns of consciousness that make each individual unique. I could locate our scattered people much faster than your human technology." Before anyone could respond, the submersible's communication system crackled to life. Dr. Chen's voice was tense but controlled. "Marcus, Zephyros, we've got a problem up here. The Kethmori just launched 12 hunter pods toward your position. You've got maybe 10 minutes before they reach the bottom." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Can we outrun them?" "Not in this submersible," Zephyros said grimly. "And if they corner us in these depths, we'll have nowhere to go." But Lyrelei was already moving, her powerful form cutting through the water toward the deepest part of the trench. "Follow me," she commanded. "I know these waters better than any hunter ever could. There are places here where even Drakmori dare not go, places where the planet itself will protect us." As the submersible followed the blue-green dragon deeper into the abyss, Marcus realized that this rescue mission was about to become something much more dangerous. But looking at the determination in Lyrelei's golden eyes, he also realized that they had just gained an ally who might be even more formidable than Zephyros himself. The real test of human Drakmori cooperation was about to begin. Lyrelei led them deeper into the trench than Marcus thought possible, past depths where the pressure should have crushed even their advanced submersible. But as they descended, strange things began to happen. The water around them seemed to shimmer with energy, and the crushing pressure that should have been building actually began to decrease. "What's happening?" Marcus asked, watching the impossible readings on their instruments. "We are entering a place that exists between spaces," Lyrelei explained, her mental voice filled with reverence. "Long ago, my people discovered that certain locations in the universe exist in a state of dimensional flux. This trench is one of them, a crack between realities where the normal laws of physics become negotiable. Behind them, the Kethmori hunter pods were falling further and further behind. Their technology, advanced as it was, couldn't follow where Lyrelei was leading them. The dragon's natural abilities allowed them to navigate dimensional anomalies that would tear apart conventional spacecraft. As they reached the bottom of the impossible trench, Marcus saw something that took his breath away. Embedded in the ocean floor was what looked like a massive crystal formation, but as they drew closer, he realized it was something far more extraordinary. It was a city, or the remains of one, made entirely of crystallized space-time. A Drakmori outpost, Zephyros breathed, his mental voice filled with wonder. I thought they were all destroyed. This one survived because it exists partially outside of normal reality, Lyreley explained. I discovered it 50 years ago and have been studying it ever since. The knowledge contained here could revolutionize our understanding of dimensional physics. Marcus stared at the impossible architecture, buildings that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their angles and curves defying everything he thought he knew about geometry. This is incredible. But why didn't you tell anyone about it? Because I knew that if word of this place spread, it would become a target for every power-hungry species in the galaxy. The Drakmori built this place as a refuge, somewhere our people could retreat if the worst happened. I have been waiting for the right time to reveal its existence. And now is the right time, Zephyros asked. Now we have an opportunity to use it properly. Marcus, your people offer protection and partnership to the surviving Drakmori. But what if we could offer them something even better? What if we could offer them a new home? A place where they could rebuild without fear or dependence on others. Marcus felt his mind reeling with the implications. You're talking about restarting Drakmori civilization. I'm talking about creating something new, Lyreley corrected. A society that combines the best of what we were with the lessons we've learned from our failures. And yes, with the wisdom and perspective that species like humanity can provide. As if summoned by their conversation, the crystalline city began to respond to the presence of two Drakmori. Ancient systems awakened and gentle light began to pulse through the transparent structures. Marcus could see chambers and corridors that seemed to stretch into infinity, spaces that were somehow both vast and intimate at the same time. The city recognizes us, Zephyros said with amazement. After all these millennia, it still remembers its creators. But their exploration was interrupted by a familiar voice on the submersible's communication system. Marcus, Zephyros, please respond. We've got a situation developing up here that you need to know about. It was Dr. Chen and he sounded worried. We're here, Dad. What's happening? The Kethmori aren't the only ones who were tracking Lyreley. We've got 3 other ships approaching the system. 2 we don't recognize and 1 that's definitely bad news. It's a harvester vessel. Marcus felt Zephyros tense beside him. What's a harvester? Slavers, Lyreley replied, her mental voice cold with anger. They capture intelligent beings and sell them to the highest bidder. They've been hunting Drakmori for centuries, hoping to acquire our knowledge and abilities. We need to get back up there, Zephyros said. No, Lyreley said firmly. We need to finish what we started here. The city can protect us, and more importantly, it can protect the other survivors we gather. But first, it needs to be properly awakened. She swam toward the largest of the crystalline structures, and Marcus watched in fascination as she placed her claws against its surface. Energy flowed between dragon and city, and suddenly Marcus could hear something new. Voices, dozens of them, speaking in harmonious mental tones. The city's archives, Lyreley explained. The accumulated knowledge and wisdom of our people, preserved for 3,000 years. But it's more than just information, it's also a means of communication. From here we can reach out to every surviving Drakmori in the galaxy simultaneously. Marcus understood immediately. You want to call them all here. Not just call them, show them. Let them see what we've found, what we could build together. Give them a choice between continued hiding and a chance at renewal. Zephyros swam closer to the city's central spire, adding his own energy to Lyreley's. Do it, he said. It's time for our people to come home. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. Marcus felt the combined mental voices of 2 ancient Drakmori, reaching out across the galaxy, touching the minds of their scattered people with a message of hope and possibility. He could sense the responses: surprise, disbelief, joy, fear, and finally, determination. Across 17 different worlds, 21 surviving Drakmori received the call and began to make their way toward the hidden city beneath Nerida Prime's oceans. Some would travel alone, others would need rescue from the various hunters that had been closing in on them, but all of them were coming. They're responding, Lyreley said with wonder. After 3,000 years of isolation, our people are choosing to reunite. Marcus felt the submersible shudder as something powerful passed overhead. Through the viewports, he could see massive shapes moving through the dimensional flux above them. Dracmori arriving from across the galaxy, drawn by the psychic beacon their friends had created. "Marcus," his father's voice crackled through the communication system. "I don't know what you three are doing down there, but whatever it is, it's working. We've got Dracmori ships appearing all over the system, and the Harvesters and Kethmori are pulling back. It looks like your dragons just announced to the galaxy that they're not extinct after all." Marcus looked at Zephyros and Lyrelai, both of whom were glowing with an inner light he had never seen before. They had moved beyond simply surviving. They were ready to live again. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked. Zephyros turned to him with eyes that sparkled with possibilities. "Now we build something new, young friend. A civilization that honors the past while embracing the future. And if you're willing, we'd like humanity to be part of that future." As Marcus watched the first Dracmori ships descend toward the crystalline city, he realized that his simple act of kindness toward a hungry dragon had started something that would reshape the galaxy. The age of hiding was over. The age of cooperation was about to begin. And somehow Marcus Chen, a 12-year-old boy from Earth, had helped make it all possible.